Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling what is, without a doubt, the largest and deadliest conflict in all of human history, World War II. This was a war that didn't just change things, it completely redrew the map of the modern world. And just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this thing, let's start with a single, absolutely staggering number. We're talking an estimated 60 to 80 million people lost their lives. And get this, over 50 million of them were civilians. That's not just a statistic. It tells you right away that this war was something entirely different. And that difference is captured perfectly by this term, total war. You see, this wasn't like older wars fought out on some distant battlefield. No. World War II brought the fight right into cities, homes, and factories. The person building a tank suddenly became just as much a target as the soldier driving it. This idea, well, it changed the face of warfare forever. So how in the world did we get here? Well, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the whole story. We'll look at the seeds of the conflict, see the shocking speed of that initial Axis attack, figure out how the Allies managed to turn the tide, and finally, really understand the new world that was forged in the fire. Okay, first things first. How did the world get dragged into a second, even more brutal global war just 20 years after the war to end all wars? What went so wrong? What's so wild is that it wasn't just one thing. It was this toxic cocktail of different issues all mixing together. Think of it like a domino effect. The super harsh Treaty of Versailles really humiliated Germany and planted these seeds of anger. That anger then created the perfect soil for aggressive ideas like fascism to grow. And fueled by all that, the imperial ambitions of Germany, Italy, and Japan just exploded. All the while, the League of Nations, the one group that was supposed to prevent this, just stood by, totally unable to put out any of the fires. And you can see that failure to act so clearly on this timeline. The other European powers were so desperate to avoid another war that they basically tried to appease Hitler. They let him march troops back into the Rhineland, they let him annex Austria, they even gave him a piece of Czechoslovakia, all in the hope that he'd finally be satisfied. He wasn't. The invasion of Poland in September 1939, well, that was the last straw. So war is declared, and right away, a new and absolutely terrifying kind of fighting is unleashed. Those early years were all about the shocking, unbelievable speed and success of the Axis powers, with Nazi Germany leading the charge. And the secret to their success? It was this revolutionary idea, Blitzkrieg, which literally means lightning war. This was the complete opposite of the slow, grinding trench warfare of World War I. Blitzkrieg was all about using fast-moving, coordinated attacks, tanks, planes, infantry, all hitting at once, to just punch a hole right through enemy lines and cause total chaos. And the results were just terrifyingly effective. In the spring of 1940, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and the Netherlands all fell, one right after another. Then, Germany just went around France's big defensive line, and the country that had held out for 4 long years in World War I was completely conquered in about 6 weeks. It was just stunning. Now, while Europe was falling under Axis control, a whole other storm was gathering on the other side of the world. In the Pacific, Japan was expanding its empire and felt backed into a corner by a U.S. oil embargo. So they made a massive gamble. On December 7, 1941, they launched a huge surprise attack on the naval base at Pearl Harbor. The goal was to cripple the U.S. fleet and knock America out of the fight before it even started. Instead, they woke up a sleeping giant and turned what was a European war into a true world war. Okay, so with the incredible industrial power and military might of the United States now in the fight, alongside the grit of Great Britain and the Soviet Union, the whole momentum of the war started to change. So how'd they pull it off? The key thing to remember is that it wasn't just one big battle. It was this relentless, coordinated push on multiple fronts all over the globe, stretching the Axis powers until they finally snapped.
Over in Europe, Hitler's worst nightmare came true, a massive war on 2 fronts. In the East, Germany was locked in his titanic struggle with the Soviet Union. We're talking the largest military clash in human history. The fighting was just unbelievably brutal, and it bled the German army dry. The turning point there was the disastrous defeat at Stalingrad, which stopped the Nazi advance for good. At the exact same time, in the West, the other allies were gearing up for one decisive, massive blow.
And that blow came on June 6, 1944, D-Day. In the biggest amphibious invasion ever attempted, over 150,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy in France. It was an incredibly bloody, high-stakes gamble. But you know what? It worked. That foothold in France was the beginning of the end for the Nazis in Western Europe. So the war ends in 1945, but that wasn't really an end to the conflict. It was actually the beginning of a whole new global order, one that was forged in the fires of the deadliest war we've ever seen. Now, even though Germany had surrendered, the war in the Pacific was still raging. An invasion of Japan was looking like it would cost millions of lives. So the United States made this world-changing decision to use a brand new, terrifying weapon. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to surrender, finally ending the war and kicking off the nuclear age. After the dust settled, the world map looked completely different. The old European empires were basically bankrupt, and they started to crumble, which led to a wave of new independent nations in Asia and Africa. And in their place, two new superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. They would spend the next 45 years locked in a tense Cold War. Germany itself was literally split in two, a perfect symbol of this new divided world. And out of all that rubble, a new organization, the United Nations, was born with one simple, desperate hope: to make sure this never, ever happens again. But beyond all the battles and the politics, we have to talk about the war's darkest secret, the Holocaust. You just can't understand this time in history without confronting the systematic, state-run genocide of 6 million Jewish people and millions of other minorities by the Nazi regime. It is the most horrifying proof of what happens when hateful ideas get unchecked power. It gives this quote a truly chilling, permanent weight. When it comes right down to it, World War II isn't just some story in a history book. It's the very foundation of the world we live in today. It's shaped our borders, our alliances, our technology, and even our deepest fears. The fighting might have stopped back in 1945, but the echoes of that war are still all around us. And that leaves us with one last, really important question. Are we actually remembering its lessons, or are we, in some ways, starting to repeat them?